Hi, I'm Clarence Mcdonald, and you're listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
Okay. At what point did you decide that you wanted to pursue music as a career?
That's okay. Yeah. How can I really answer that question? I always loved music, and studied it in school. But I think about the time I was 15 or 16, I realized it's what I wanted to do for a living or a vocation or work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, quite early on, though, I knew that music was going to be the fun part of my life.
You were still in school when you were playing piano in jazz clubs on weekends. How did your parents view upon their teenage son balancing his studies with hanging out in jazz clubs?
It's always amazing because your parents are the ones who make you take music lessons. Then when you decide you want to get serious about music, and especially in the black community, well, why don't you become a school teacher or a doctor? I said, I don't like either one of those. So my mother was like more than a little upset. You want to be a musician? Well, you made me take all of those music lessons for what reason? So my father, he was kind of like, hey, what you feel like doing? Okay, just his words were whatever you decide to do. And I guess mom was the same way once she reconciled herself to the fact that that's what we were going to do. My father always said, whatever you do, just be good at it.
Mm-hmm. You got the call to work with the great Ray Charles. What a wonderful experience that must have been for you at such a young age. Tell us about life on the road with Ray.
Okay, that's a story, and it's got a great ending because I recorded with him in 1964 an album, Live at the Shrine Auditorium. I had the great pleasure of doing this last record before he passed in 2004, Genius Loves Company. And the song that I did with two other people that wrote the arrangements ended up winning the Grammy for Best Gospel Song, which was Heaven Help Us All. But the greatest part of that experience was after 40 years, I'm sitting on a piano bench with Ray, and Ray is saying, man, I thank you for playing on my record. And I turned to him and told him, Ray, most of what I'm playing, I learned from you. Because we lived about 12 blocks from each other, so I had occasions to see him and listen to him regularly.
What kind of band leader was he? How did he relate to his musicians?
Well, now that's another story. And in those days, he didn't pay a lot of money. But I will say this, the musical education you got, you couldn't have bought at any price. But in terms of a living wage, that wasn't the best thing that happened there. He would squeeze the buffalo off of a nickel. But I learned so much from him. Because like I said, if you could make it through that band, there was no place else you couldn't go and make it work. The two hardest bands in show business were Ray Charles and James Brown.
Yeah. Going on to the Genius Loves Company sessions, it must have been an amazing feeling in the studio working on that album.
Back right where we were 40 years ago. That's the part that made it so amazing. RPM Studios, same place he'd had for all of those years, and now they're going to turn it into a museum.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Ah. After working with Ray, you started getting involved in session work. Was it a competitive field to break into?
Well, actually, I was working with Ray, came back, and I got drafted. So, in fact, did you see the movie Ray?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Okay. When he was coming back into Boston, and he was detained by the local constabulary, or as we like to say, as he was stopped by the police and detained, I was actually on the plane.
Oh.
Yes, there was an opening act, a group called The Vocals. And the reason you never heard of that group is because the next year they changed their name to The Fifth Dimension.
Ah, well, them I have heard of.
Yes. And that year, in 65, we were working with Ray. And the next year, I got drafted. So they went with a song called Up, Up and Away, and I ended up going up, up and away to Vietnam. So, but to answer the question, when I came back from Vietnam, took me a little while to get adjusted, and then I started playing again. And you start doing small sessions, and as you get better and people hear about you, you start to do bigger sessions. So I don't think it was so much competition. The only competition was being competent.
Of all the sessions you've done over the years, I'm sure you've been asked many times to pick your favourites, but what about one that just, not so much successful, but one that just gave you the most personal satisfaction?
Actually, almost every session I did gave me lots of satisfaction, because the real satisfaction for me as a player was trying to complement the singer and have an interplay with the musicians. And that was on a daily basis, because some of the greatest records made never sold. But the other thing, and it happens in time, you play long enough and you come into a session and you realize on this day, all of us are feeling it the same way. And that's when you know you've got something that people will buy. Because basically, music is just a matter of putting tones together that harmonically blend and make people feel better. That's when they say it's a hit. But it's just the right combination of tones that affects the human body in such a way as to make them enjoy listening to it.
Absolutely. Over the years working in the studio, did you find you developed an ear for knowing which recordings would be successful even before release?
Well, you had a feeling. If there was a formula that I could quantify, I'd have a lot more money now than I do. You kind of know when there's a happy marriage between the music and the artist. And when that happens, then people love it. But there's no formula to it, and you never know. It's kind of like golf. Guys go out and practice every day, and then one day they'll win a golf tournament. The next week, they won't even qualify to play. And that's just the way it is. The same people in the studio can make a record that flops, and a week later, different song, same people, and the next thing you know, the record's all over the charts. So there is, well, let's just put it like this. I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason as to why it works.
Yeah. Can you remember any recordings in particular where you just instantly had that feeling that this one just cannot fail?
Well, I think probably working with James Taylor, doing those 3 records, the reason we were so sure that all of it would work was because we were playing live.
Yep.
So basically, by the time we got to the studio, it was an afterthought, which is another thing I think that's been lost today. The reason we made so many hits in the 60s, 70s, and 80s was because most of those groups played live. So you knew by the applause which tunes people liked already before you went in to record. Nowadays, people go in and try to make a record without consulting the real experts, which is the general audience. Yeah, so it's a lot of guesswork. We weren't guessing in those days. We knew what we were doing, and the record showed it. So I'm very happy to say a lot of the stuff that we did from the 60s and 70s is still being played. In fact, I guess 3 weeks ago, we had the #1 record, R&B record for 8 weeks with a singer named Monica, and the song was called Everything to Me, which was taken from a song I had written with 2 other writers, Fritz Basket and Denise Williams, that we wrote back in the 70s. And it's still #5 on the R&B chart, so we're smiling very much about that. But a lot of the new records that are out now, most people don't know, they came from stuff that was done back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And last year we had the same situation. There's a good young singer, Erykah Badu, and she had a song out called Honey. And that was a sample taken from a song I had co-written and produced on a jazz singer, Nancy Wilson, back in 1977. And they took it and made it into a young hip-hop hit, which I was very happy about.
I bet. You've worked with an amazing array of artists over the years. One that stands out is Bill Withers. Can you tell us a little bit about Bill and the type of artist he was to work with?
Bill always reminded me of just your honest country sort of guy. Came in saying what he felt, and when he was singing songs, he was singing about stuff he was living, which is what always makes it work. People always understand when you're expressing the human experience, because I guarantee you, at least 1 million people have had the same experience you had. And when you set it to music, it's kind of like, I like this. It reminds me of what I've had to deal with, which is the other thing I have to say about songwriting. I would like to see more songwriting nowadays based on real life experience instead of sex me up, and it's like you got to have a little bit more to say. And that was Bill Withers. He was a good songsmith.
Did it surprise you when he walked away from recording when he did? He still had so much to offer.
No, not really. The idea, and especially because he had a family. A lot of times you have to give up a lot of your family life to be what they call a quote unquote star. And a lot of people didn't want to do that, and I can understand it. I remember in particular one day I was at lunch with James Taylor, and we were tired. We've been working, and this guy comes over, and it's like, I felt bad for both of them because the guy was as nervous and he was trying to put on a bravado. I'm trying to get an autograph for my kid, and he wasn't. But it was just the idea that he picked the worst time to do it. And it was like, I said, but you know what, you have to take the good with the bad. That's your star. But there's sometimes when you like to just be left alone and you still have to try to smile when you really just rather just rest. So there's always a trade-off in stardom.
Yeah.
You get some perks, but also you get some things that go along with it.
A couple of other people I know have had a profound effect on your life and career. Eubie Blake?
Now that's talking about the fun end of it. First of all, here's a man who lived to be 100 years and 13 days old. And I remember talking to him, and he was in his 90s at the time and was playing unbelievably well. But for me, he was like the walking encyclopedia of everything you needed to know about the entertainment industry. He told me what happened, how people did what they did, how the games were played by the record companies, the promoters, the whole routine. He had seen it all and was kind enough to impart it. And while I'm mentioning that, there was one other couple who took me under their wings that did the same thing, and that was Steve Allen and Jane Meadows. Mm-hmm. Neither one of them had a reason to. They were just the kind of people, it's like, you're in this industry, let us warn you of the pitfalls so that you don't make the mistakes we either made or saw other people make. And I always remember with great delight Steve Allen saying, well, when we first started out, they didn't want to give us cash, so they paid us in stock of a company that was just starting out. He says the company was IBM, and I kept the stock. And he this big smile on his face.
Also, O.C. Smith, also a profound influence on you.
I'm sorry, could you say it again, please?
O.C. Smith?
Oh, there are 3 prominent men in my life. My father being the first one, another gentleman named Gerald Jones, who just passed about 3 weeks ago, and O.C. Smith. And it's so funny because this morning I played golf with some of the guys from that church, and we all you can think of are the greatest, fondest memories of O.C. Smith. We had some musical experiences for which there are no words. We would play and then look at each other, and it was kind of like, oh boy, we went to a place then. I've had occasions to hear, I was the musical director at his church for 8 years, up until he passed, and I was there 5 years afterwards. But we had some moments that there are no words to describe. You just know that the music and the energy and everything at that given time took us to a level that if you weren't there to see it, you just missed a great experience.
There's been a great diversity in the artists that you've worked with over the years. How important has it been for you to be adaptable and flexible as a musician?
I think it's the most important thing that you can do. If you're not willing to step out of your comfort zone, you're not very likely to grow. I'm very happy to say I've worked with everybody from Seals and Croft to Hall and Oates to the Jackson 5 to Barbra Streisand to Ella Fitzgerald to Chico Hamilton. And the joy for me is to see how many different places. Well, first of all, if you're a lover of music, you learn every style because it's more about what it is you say you love, music. I used to make more money playing country and western sessions, and the guy would say, "You learned that kind of music?" It's like, yeah, because it is music. So yes, I love the fact that I've had a career playing with so many different people. And right now, I'm so happy because I've got a couple of young writers I'm working with. I feel like whenever you get so old, the youngsters don't like you, it's time for you to check your stock. So I'm still getting played and playing with the youngsters. So I did a record with a couple of years ago with Justin Timberlake, and the average age of the band was 61 at that time. So, like I said, oldies but goodies. Yeah. We're still good.
That's right. You've been fronting your own band in recent times. Tell us about the transition for you from sideman to band leader. Was it a difficult step?
It is like being in two completely different worlds. It's amazing how you can be in the same arena and not realize how different one position is from another. What happened was I had said, you know what, I'm going to just put a group together and go out and play a show, because I felt like some of the kids didn't know enough about live music and the interplay between musicians. And I had a friend of mine, David Hampton, and he says, well, if you're going to do that, then let's set up to record it. Then I had another friend who said, well, you know, I've got a buddy, let's set up and film it. So what started out is, let me just put a group together, play some of the songs I've written, produced, and recorded, you know, for a live audience, turned out to be more of an affair. And I'm happy with it now. I'm finishing a DVD from one of the shows that I did. And my desire now is to go out and play performing arts societies, colleges, and just do clinics on live playing. In fact, this week has been one of the fun weeks for me. Started on Sunday, did a recording with a country western singer, and then I spent the last 2 days with one of my favorite guitar players, David T. Walker, and we've been playing live music again. And I love that more than I can tell you.
I know you're a great believer in the old saying, practice makes perfect, and constant practice making a better musician. Do you think there's a tendency for younger musicians coming through not to heed that advice and take things for granted and therefore not living up to their potential?
I think lots of times, and some of it has to do with school, it works both ways. I've met lots of musicians who are educated beyond their own means, which means they play too many notes because they think that's what's supposed to be done. And I've met others who I think are missing the essence of what music is, because it's a conversation. You play a bit, you listen a bit. And that's the part that I've seen with the younger musicians. It's like, let me talk. Well, that would be great if you had something to talk about. Why don't you listen a little bit? It may help what it is you plan to say. So that's that happy. I'm trying to get it to where that art form of listening and playing isn't lost.
I was surprised to hear you say in another interview that you write a lot of your music on guitar, which is not your known instrument. Why is that?
Well, for professional reasons, I spent so many years as a recording musician. When I sat down at a keyboard, lots of times I slip back into what I call pro brain, which is let me make this right and make sure everybody loves it, which is the way you had to function. And that's not the most creative. So, and actually it's been a real funny story because Broughton Guitars, which is a Canadian company, I told one of the guys there that I like to write with guitar, and they were kind enough to send me one of their signature guitars. So I've been laughing about it, but no, I do most of my writing with guitar because I get out of my own way. When I sit at the piano, I get too professional. At a guitar, I know I'll never be good at it. So it allows me to just go and make the basis for creative songwriting.
Tell us about your band, Evolution, and the background of some of the players there.
Okay, well, the band, and that's why I call it Evolution, because it is in transition. The original band had Matt Dahlgren on guitar, Ricky Taylor on bass and vocals, Louis Van Taylor on saxophone and other assorted woodwinds, Steve Stevens on drums, and Mari Ishida, who's back in Japan as the second keyboardist. But the last performance I did, I went and got some of my real old buddies, which was Ricky Lawson on drums, Dean Parks on guitar, Reggie Hamilton on bass, Mayungo Jackson on percussion. So I'm kind of doing like the Herbie Hancock routine or the Miles Davis routine, which is you get different players depending upon what it is you're trying to present. So yeah, Evolution, and that was the reason the group was named Evolution. It evolves.
And before I let you go, Clarence, is there anything left to you to achieve in music that you'd still like to do that you haven't done yet?
Well, actually, I'm smiling right now. I said I wanted to get back to #1, and that happened.
It happened, yeah.
8 weeks ago. Well, but I think what I want to do most is just go out and play live again and keep writing songs. Which reminds me of that there's a guy, and his name is Joel Gaines, and we need to email because I want to give you his number. He just brought me his CD today, and he's a keyboard player, and I absolutely love what he does. And I'm hoping the two of you all can hook up because there are so many great musicians, singers, and instrumentalists around that most people never hear of. That's why I'm so happy to be able to do this interview, because you want to let people know there are lots of folks that you may not hear about in the great publicity machine, but the music that's made that you really love, when you check, you'll find out there are a whole group of folks that do that just do not get the notoriety that I think they should deserve.
Absolutely, that's true. And one last thing before I let you go, upcoming plans. What's in your books for the foreseeable future?
I'm going to finish a new CD. I am finishing the editing on the DVD, and then I'm going to set up to go out and play and see if I can make some people smile. I'm also going to Japan with David T. Walker in December. But other than that, I'll be right here writing music and playing and enjoying the fact that every day when I get up, life is fun because music is in my life.
Terrific. Hey, Clarence, thanks so much for your time. Just a pleasure to speak to you. It really is.
Thank you so much. Let's stay in touch and let's do this again.
Absolutely. We'll stay in touch. Okay,
All right.
Take care.
Bye.